her saying how important it was to establish a relationship between Caitlyn as a coach because she's the centerpiece of everything we do.
Like forge that relationship with her for all the reasons.
I mean, really important. I had just a little bit of a relationship with Caitlyn from calling her games a number of times, when she was in college, but it was very important. Look, she's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. And most important.
At least that was said, because I think a lot of the time, not even a lot of the time, she has said it herself. It's not like people are making this up, but she has said it herself, basically, like, we're building around Kelsey Mitchell.
The words dropped like a bomb on Sue Bird's own podcast. And I'm telling you, the fallout was immediate and absolutely devastating. Stephanie White's unfiltered, raw truth about the Fever's inner turmoil and the unspoken, simmering tension with their superstar, Caitlin Clark, didn't just ripple through the league. It ripped through it, tearing apart any illusion of calm and forcing a literal shockwave of speculation to engulf the entire WNBA. Sources close to the team, utterly reeling from this incredibly candid admission, started whispering, and those whispers painted a clear picture of Clark's growing frustration, a frustration that has reportedly now escalated to an unthinkable, almost unbelievable ultimatum. So now, Bird herself is in crisis mode, scrambling desperately, facing down a PR nightmare of epic proportions. The entire WNBA is holding its breath right now, on the edge of its seat, after Clark's alleged threat to walk away from the Fever completely igniting a firestorm that nobody, and I mean nobody, least of all Sue Bird herself, saw coming. This isn't just a bit of locker room drama, folks. This is a seismic, league-altering shift that could absolutely redefine the future of professional women's basketball forever. All of this stemming from a single podcast interview that was, believe it or not, meant to be an innocent, casual peek behind the curtain. Instead, the league is now buzzing with urgent whispers of Clark demanding radical, non-negotiable changes, or else, and the implications of that or else are staggering, truly beyond comprehension. The fallout is only just beginning to unfold, and honestly, I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here.
A lot of the time, not even a lot of the time, she has said it herself. It's not like people are making this up, but she has said it herself, basically, like, we're building around Kelsey Mitchell. She is a big reason why people believe this team is solely being built around Kelsey Mitchell, because as much as anything, she said it. So at least she's saying Caitlin's the centerpiece of what we're doing.
Importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully. I'm not sure, myself as a 23-year-old would have been able to handle it the way that she does and still perform.
Stephanie White's stunning, almost defiant declaration on Sue Bird's podcast that Caitlin Clark is the centerpiece of everything we do landed with the force of a thunderclap, because it directly and fundamentally contradicted what had been the prevailing, consistent team narratives for so long. This sudden, jarring shift in public messaging sent undeniable shockwaves throughout the organization and beyond, exposing a deep, fundamental philosophical struggle raging within the Fever organization itself. Insiders, those who've been watching this team closely, had long been led to believe, and many genuinely thought, the team was strategically building its foundation around Kelsey Mitchell, a sentiment Clark herself had reportedly voiced significant frustration over in private. This glaringly inconsistent messaging, now laid bare for the entire nation to hear on a prominent national platform, immediately created a deep, undeniable fault line in the very fabric of team cohesion. The public acknowledgement of Clark's absolutely central role, arriving so late in the season, felt less like an established, self-evident truth, and more like an urgent, desperate course correction, a reactive move rather than a proactive statement of fact. This is a move many are now seeing as an overt, last-ditch attempt to appease a star player whose patience was demonstrably wearing incredibly thin. The entire revelation immediately intensified whispers of widespread internal discontent, hinting at a very real, simmering power struggle unfolding behind the scenes. This very public attempt to redefine roles and priorities could very well be the explosive flashpoint for the rumored bench drama that's been plaguing the team, pushing it to an undeniable boiling point.
Be honest, like I'm a very honest, transparent coach. Like you're gonna know, what I'm thinking or where I'm coming from. And if you don't, and you certainly want to ask, but I'm going to be honest, and I think that I certainly appreciate that about her. And I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of like competitiveness. Now it comes out in different ways. But we both just really want to win, and we want to set ourselves and our teammates up for success.
I mean, she answered that well. And in fairness, like, Stephanie White always speaks well. And I do think...
And then, White openly admitted she actually needed to earn Caitlin Clark's trust, a statement that honestly sent a genuine shiver down spines across the entire WNBA. This wasn't just some casual, off-the-cuff comment you might hear in any interview. Oh no, this exposed an underlying, deeply troubling fragility in the foundational relationship between the team's undisputed biggest star and its head coach. Think about it. The very idea that such a crucial bond wasn't automatic wasn't a given, but instead something requiring active, painstaking cultivation suggested a profound lack of initial connection, or perhaps even more concerning, early friction, that developed right out of the gate. White's insistence on being a very honest, transparent coach, while simultaneously stressing the need to earn trust, painted a stark, almost contradictory picture of the significant challenges she undeniably faced. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was there an initial barrier that Clark put up? Was Clark's skepticism rooted in previous experiences, maybe perceived slights from the coaching staff, or even the broader organization? This admission, broadcast on Sue Bird's highly influential platform, dramatically fueled speculation that Clark's long-term commitment to the Fever wasn't as solid as many once believed, especially if trust was a significant hurdle from day one. The implications for immediate team dynamics and Clark's long-term future with the Fever suddenly became much clearer. The struggle for trust at the highest level of professional sports is always a catalyst for drama. And in this particular situation, it was absolutely no exception.
Want to set ourselves and our teammates up for success.
I mean, she answered that well. And in fairness, like, Stephanie White always speaks well. And I do think there is a mutual respect there between the two of them. And realistically, I think until it's proven that it will not work, Caitlin Clark will want Stephanie White as her coach. Definitely more so than Christy Sides. If we're being completely honest here. Like, Christy Sides was not the greatest as far as coaches were concerned. But yeah, so let's go and take a listen to the difference between
Coach White, in her remarkably candid discussion, didn't pull any punches when addressing the unique, often frustrating challenges of coaching such a young, developing team. Her pointed remarks about needing to repeat things a lot and the slippage from one day to the next resonated deeply with anyone who understands the intricacies of team building, but more importantly, it hinted at a profound, potential source of ongoing frustration for a hyper-demanding, elite player like Caitlin Clark. While seemingly innocuous on the surface, these comments, aired on Sue Bird's hugely influential podcast, could easily be interpreted as thinly veiled critiques of the team's glaring inexperience and their evident lack of immediate grasp on complex systems and strategies. For a player of Clark's unparalleled caliber, a generational talent known globally for her elite understanding of the game and her razor-sharp basketball IQ, consistently having to revisit basic concepts and fundamental principles could be incredibly taxing, emotionally draining, and profoundly demotivating. This creates an underlying, almost palpable tension between elite, ready-to-win talent and the developmental needs of a rebuilding roster, creating a fertile ground for the very bench drama we're now witnessing, where seasoned expectations relentlessly clash with raw potential. The struggle to maintain consistent high performance day to day, as articulated so frankly by White, paints a vivid picture of a deeply challenging environment that might test the patience of even the most dedicated and stoic athlete. One has to wonder, could this constant, grinding repetition be a silent but significant contributor to Clark's growing frustration and, ultimately, her potential desire for a different situation?
It's alleged discontent.
Veteran team, and as also being a veteran on a young team, it's very different being in the position where you are kind of the young player, they have to repeat things for when vets are on you, and then when you're a vet on a young player, you're standing there like, how the fuck are they not getting this? But I see two different types of coaching.
A certain, like, we want to play a horn set a certain way. Like, this is our base way we're going to play it. We shouldn't have to go over that and shoot around every single day. Just our adjustments, right? Well, with a young team, sometimes you do. So a lot more time in that. It was also a team in Indiana that had been in the bottom of the league in defense. And so we spent a lot of time just on defensive.
The podcast conversation starkly laid bare the Fever's absolutely abysmal defensive record, revealing the undeniable truth that they were languishing at the bottom of the league in defense, a truly damning statistic. White explicitly criticized the previous coaching staff's approach as laughably simplistic, a blunt assessment that left no room for interpretation. Her pointed, almost scathing comparison to Christie Side's get-stop strategy and her reliance solely on Christy Wallace on the best player wasn't just a critique. It was a public indictment, a full frontal assault on the team's recent past and its defensive philosophy. This raw, unfiltered honesty, broadcast on Sue Bird's widely heard podcast, painted a grim picture of a franchise starting literally from scratch, defensively bankrupt and completely devoid of fundamental principles before White even arrived. For a player like Caitlin Clark, a superstar accustomed to winning and elite execution, inheriting such a fundamentally flawed, defensively porous system must have been a crushing, soul-destroying blow. The sheer mountain of work required to instill even basic defensive principles, a task White detailed meticulously, highlighting the relentless day-in day-out grind, underscored the deep-seated, systemic issues Clark walked directly into. This wasn't just about learning a new defensive scheme, it was about the arduous, grueling process of unlearning years of poor habits and ingrained deficiencies, a monumental non-intent that could easily lead a star player to question her entire situation and, more critically, the team's fundamental ability to ever truly compete at an elite level. The immense weight of this defensive burden, exposed so candidly on Bird's platform, certainly adds a significant amount of fuel to the fire that's now engulfing the team.
Idea of defense was get stops. Like, in fairness, like, she did not. Chrissy Sides is the worst. She kept saying, I'm a defensive coach. And I kid you not, the defense was put Christy Wallace on your team's best player. That was their defense.
Floor, but in particular on the defensive end, with some of the regression, just re-emphasizing and drilling some things. Like, we could get away with in Connecticut a drill that covered 4 things at once. With young players, you can't do that yet. Now, my hope is that we're going to eventually get there. But certainly that, and there's no substitute for experience, and this is a group.
White's glowing, almost effusive description of Kelsey Mitchell as a pro's pro, low maintenance, and the player who had been through the trenches with this franchise was undeniably incredibly high praise. It painted a picture of a resilient, dedicated veteran, and honestly, it was deserved. But on Sue Bird's highly public show, this passionate endorsement, while absolutely deserved for Mitchell's loyalty and performance, could be seen as inadvertently highlighting a potential disconnect or even a subtle, unintentional slight to newer, high-profile additions, particularly Caitlin Clark. By so emphatically emphasizing Mitchell's long, arduous journey and her deserved opportunity to be a part of the successful years, White, perhaps without intending to, powerfully framed Mitchell as the enduring, unwavering heart of the franchise. This narrative, while incredibly powerful and resonant in its own right, might have inadvertently overshadowed Clark's own critical, transformative role, and even worse, amplified the perception of a deeply divided locker room. In a climate already thick with pervasive rumors of internal strife and simmering discontent, elevating one star's narrative so passionately and publicly on such a prominent platform could very easily be misconstrued, adding yet another complex, volatile layer to the bench drama that's now undeniably engulfing the team. Was this an attempt to thoughtfully balance the narrative and give Mitchell her due, or did it inadvertently expose deeper, more troubling currents in the team's internal dynamics where established loyalties and old guard principles might clash dramatically with new expectations and the arrival of a generational talent the question hangs heavy in the air.
I was really happy with that for her about that. With AB, I learned how high of an IQ player she is, how great of a facilitator she is.
Yeah, I think how did it take her coaching Aaliyah Boston to learn how good a facilitator she was? In her defense, Christy Sides was the player who started using AB as the hub. Christy Sides post-Olympic break was the player that turned AB into what AB is now. Like, no, it was Sides, not Stephanie White. Like, post-Olympic Aaliyah Boston was when people started calling her female Jokic.
She could be almost like a point forward. You know, I didn't.
A truly surprising and somewhat jarring revelation came from White regarding Aaliyah Boston's incredible high IQ and her exceptional facilitation talent. What was astonishing was White's frank admission that she didn't get that watching her play in college or in her first couple of years. This candid confession on Sue Bird's podcast, while undoubtedly praising Boston's current abilities, also subtly but significantly highlighted a past oversight, perhaps by the league itself in its scouting, or more directly, by previous Fever coaching staff. But here's where it gets even more fascinating, and frankly, a bit awkward. The host, Sue Bird, offered her own counterpoint, live on air. Bird stated that Christy Sides, the much-maligned previous coach who White had just criticized, was actually the one who began using AB as the offensive hub, transforming her into a female Jokic post-Olympics. This was a truly stunning reversal, a direct and public contradiction. This pointed correction, made live on air, cast an immediate and awkward shadow on White's carefully constructed narrative and, more broadly, underlined a wider organizational struggle within the Fever to truly recognize, appreciate, and fully utilize their players' unique talent. Such a public disagreement over a foundational player's development, especially on a platform as prominent and influential as Bird's, could certainly contribute to an already charged atmosphere of uncertainty and palpable internal friction. If even basic player strengths and developmental milestones were misidentified, or worse, credited to the wrong coach, it speaks volumes about the tumultuous, perhaps even chaotic environment Caitlin Clark might find herself navigating daily, directly feeding into the ever-growing bench drama narrative.
White. Like, post-Olympic Aaliyah Boston was when people started calling her female Jokic.
She could be almost like a point forward. You know, I didn't get that watching her play in college. I didn't get that, you know, in her first couple of years.
How? You literally played against her. You literally played against her in the playoffs. Like, how did you scout this team so well and not realize that about Aaliyah Boston? Aaliyah Boston was elite. She was always an elite passer. She was an elite hub. Like, in fairness to Christy Sides, whether it was Sides or whether it was the players just taking over and coaching.
White. All right, so David Lee described Caitlin Clark as Taylor Swift 2.0, a comparison that immediately emphasizes the immense, almost suffocating spotlight and the crushing weight that she carries every single day. This incredibly powerful analogy, shared on Sue Bird's widely listened to platform, painted a vivid, almost stark picture of the unparalleled pressure Clark navigates constantly. While undoubtedly intended as a compliment, praising Clark's remarkable ability to compartmentalize and perform under such relentless scrutiny, it simultaneously underscored the extraordinary burden unilaterally placed upon her young shoulders. Think about it. Such an intense, constant, all-encompassing spotlight, coupled with the team's ongoing, undeniable struggles on the court, creates an environment absolutely ripe for burnout and deep-seated frustration. If the team's performance isn't even remotely matching the stratospheric, almost impossible expectations placed on its singular star, that immense, solitary weight can very quickly become unbearable, pushing even the most resilient athlete to their breaking point. This public acknowledgement by White on a highly visible podcast might have inadvertently amplified the very pressure Clark is tirelessly trying to manage internally, potentially contributing to a future breaking point. Could the Taylor Swift 2.0 moniker, while intended to celebrate her unprecedented impact, actually highlight the profound isolation and the nearly impossible expectations that could lead an athlete of her caliber to want to quit a situation deemed utterly untenable? The pressure, as White illuminated, is truly immense, and the podcast brought it right to the forefront for all to see. And here's where things get even more concerning. Perhaps the most telling and frankly unsettling revelation came when White lamented the extreme rarity of all three stars, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, hooping well simultaneously. This candid, almost mournful admission on Sue Bird's podcast highlighted a critical, systemic flaw in the team's fundamental chemistry and execution that went far beyond individual performances. It wasn't just about individual talent, because they clearly have that in spades. It was about the collective synergy, the crucial fit, consistently failing to materialize in any meaningful way. This inability to maximize their combined, incredible star power inevitably leads to crucial team losses, which in turn escalates frustration, especially for a hyper-competitive winner like Clark. If the pieces simply aren't fitting together, and the collective unit isn't truly greater than the sum of its individual parts, a star player with Clark's drive might very quickly lose faith in the entire project. The broadcast's revelation that there were very, very few times where all three of them truly played well together was a damning indictment of the team's current, disjointed state. This glaring lack of collective success, broadcast to the world, provides a tangible, undeniable reason for Clark's rumored discontent and the bench drama that has now gripped the WNBA, suggesting fundamental, deep-seated issues far beyond mere individual player performance. The struggle for cohesion is starkly real, and it was put on full display. Furthermore, White's insistence that players must understand what it takes on a daily basis to avoid losing games that you shouldn't lose underscored a profound, foundational expectation gap within the young Fever squad. This message, subtly but powerfully delivered on Sue Bird's podcast, implicitly suggested a deficit in professional maturity or consistent daily effort from some players within the roster. For a hyper-competitive leader like Caitlin Clark, witnessing these preventable losses due to perceived daily slippage, those small compounding errors could be a massive source of internal conflict and deep-seated frustration. The coach's plea for sustained excellence hinted at deeper issues than just raw talent. Perhaps a struggle with the sheer mental grind and unwavering discipline required for a grueling professional season. Such a stark observation, made publicly, adds another complex layer to the brewing bench drama. It strongly suggests an environment where not everyone is pulling their weight consistently, leading to an almost inevitable frustration among those who clearly are. The public airing of this daily challenge paints a clear picture of an uphill battle for the Fever, and even more so for Clark. The burden of leadership in such demanding circumstances becomes even heavier, potentially pushing her to the brink of her patience. Yet, in a striking admission, White also declared, "I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of competitiveness." This was a truly fascinating moment on Sue Bird's podcast, highlighting a shared, intense, almost obsessive drive between coach and star. While clearly intended to bridge a connection and foster mutual understanding, it also subtly underscored the potentially volatile nature of two such intensely driven personalities. This shared psychopathic desire to win, while undeniably a positive and necessary trait in elite sports, can also very easily lead to fierce clashes and profound disagreements when expectations aren't met or strategies diverge. The dynamic between two hyper-competitive individuals, especially when one is coaching the other, can quickly escalate from mutual respect to intense friction if not meticulously and carefully managed. The very intensity that binds them could also be the potent source of powerful disagreements, creating an undercurrent of bench drama that's always on the verge of eruption. This shared trait suggests a relationship of both deep understanding and potential high-stakes conflict, where every decision carries immense emotional weight, making the recent tension all the more understandable and predictable. White further revealed that coaching this young team demanded more from us, coaches, in terms of our energy, in terms of our ability to keep them at a certain level, in terms of our discipline to maintaining detail and not letting the slippage occur as much. This candid insight on Sue Bird's podcast highlighted the sheer, exhaustive, almost overwhelming effort required from the coaching staff, implicitly because of the players' ongoing developmental needs and their struggles with consistency. For a player like Caitlin Clark, who thrives on precision, elite execution, and unwavering attention to detail, this constant, draining battle against slippage and for maintaining fundamental detail could be incredibly disheartening. It suggests an environment where the foundational elements of basketball are still a struggle, rather than a given, which might make achieving consistent winning nearly impossible. Such a public articulation of the coaching staff's immense burden hints at a profound, systemic challenge within the team's dynamics, a struggle for collective discipline and consistent effort that might be testing Clark's patience to its absolute limits. This demand for constant vigilance and meticulous detail from coaches simply to prevent regression could be the silent killer of team morale and a prime cause of the bench drama now making headlines. The conversation on Sue Bird's podcast starkly revealed a clear player preference. Caitlin Clark will want Stephanie White's coach, definitely more so in Christie's sides. This direct comparison, unequivocally favoring White over the previous coach, while seemingly positive for White, also profoundly highlighted a past coaching relationship that was clearly detrimental to team morale and player satisfaction. The unspoken implication here is that Clark endured a less than ideal, perhaps even actively negative, situation under sides. And while White certainly offers an improvement, the lingering scars of past coaching failures and discontent very much remain. Such a definitive statement about coaching preferences, aired publicly, underscores the deep instability and inconsistent leadership Clark and her teammates have clearly faced. It points to a history of disappointment and unmet expectations that makes any current friction or bench drama even more acute and understandable. The constant turnover or perceived inadequacy in coaching leadership can wear down even the most resilient players, making them far more sensitive and reactive to any new challenges that arise. This crucial historical context provides invaluable insight into Clark's current mindset and her potential impatience with any lingering issues that plague the team. The past, as this podcast so vividly brought out, is never truly in the past, and its shadow looms large over the present. White's stark comparison between the young Fever team and her previous veteran Connecticut team, particularly regarding vital practice time and the teaching of defensive fundamentals, exposed the vast, almost unfathomable chasm between the two. Her description of Connecticut as a team that had always been really good defensively, where they didn't have to do that, meaning teach basic defensive principles, profoundly underscored the Fever's fundamental deep-seated deficiency. This public comparison on Sue Bird's platform, while factually accurate, could easily be interpreted by competitive players like Caitlin Clark as a painful, frustrating reminder of just how far behind they truly are. It paints a picture of a foundational long-term rebuild rather than a team poised and ready to compete at an elite level right now, a reality that could be deeply frustrating and demoralizing for a generational talent who is eager for immediate tangible success. The expectation of having to relearn basic principles, a task White implicitly stated was not necessary for an experienced veteran squad, illustrates the sheer magnitude of the developmental curve the Fever still face. This public airing of the team's basic struggles, juxtaposed against the backdrop of an elite, veteran standard, adds significant weight to the bench drama narrative, suggesting a deep-seated chasm between the team's ambition and its current capability. White openly lamented, "Some games that we lost early in the season and even late in the season that you shouldn't lose," acknowledging these crucial, preventable errors cost the Fever dearly, potentially altering their playoff seeding and ultimately their postseason fate. This blunt, uncompromising assessment on Sue Bird's influential podcast highlighted the tangible, painful consequences of the team's pervasive inexperience and maddening inconsistency. For a player like Caitlin Clark, whose entire illustrious career has been defined by an insatiable desire to win at all costs, these preventable, almost self-inflicted losses must have been agonizing beyond measure. The difference between hosting a playoff game or going on the road, or being a sixth seed versus being the second seed, as White articulated, represents monumental stakes in professional basketball. This candid recognition of past failures and agonizingly missed opportunities could very easily breed intense frustration and a profound sense of wasted potential among star players who desperately want to win. It signals that the team is not just losing, but losing in ways that reflect a damning lack of fundamental discipline and execution, systemic issues that could certainly push Clark to her breaking point. The stark realization that small mistakes had huge, season-altering consequences, shared publicly, is a clear, potent driver of any bench drama, fueling the narrative of Clark's deep frustration with the team's current stalled trajectory. White's praise for Caitlin Clark's elite mind and her almost supernatural ability to see things 2-3 passes ahead highlighted her unparalleled, almost visionary basketball IQ. However, this profound compliment, delivered on Sue Bird's podcast, also implicitly underscored a potential problem. If Clark is operating on such an advanced mental plane, is the rest of the team consistently able to keep pace with her foresight and execution? The glaring discrepancy between Clark's visionary playmaking and the team's current developmental stage could be a constant simmering source of friction. An elite mind needs elite execution around it to truly shine, and if her teammates are still struggling with basic principles and fundamental reads, Clark's advanced vision might be going unutilized, or worse, completely misunderstood by those around her. This gaping chasm between her unique, generational talent and the team's current capabilities could lead to deep, pervasive frustration for a player who thrives on efficiency, precision, and the execution of complex play. The acknowledgement of her extraordinary foresight, while undeniably positive, inadvertently draws attention to the immense challenge of integrating such a generational talent into a still developing, often inconsistent roster. It's a dynamic ripe for bench drama, where individual brilliance clashes dramatically with collective growth, potentially fueling her desire for a more competitive, immediately ready-to-win environment. And perhaps the most unsettling truth, quietly but persistently underscored throughout the entire podcast, was the pervasive, nagging struggle to consistently get the absolute best out of the three stars, Clark, Boston, and Mitchell, simultaneously. White's nuanced, almost melancholic observations, shared on Sue Bird's influential platform, painted a vivid picture of a team perpetually just almost there, always on the cusp, but never fully clicking as a cohesive, dominant unit. This pervasive inability to truly unlock the full, combined potential of their star core is the ultimate source of frustration, manifesting directly as the bench drama now making headlines across the sports world. If the very foundation of the team's strategy, which is explicitly built around these three incredible talents, isn't consistently delivering results, then profound doubts about the entire project naturally arise. This isn't about individual blame, it's about a collective failure to synergize at the highest, most critical level of professional sports. The implications of this unresolved core issue are profound and far-reaching, suggesting fundamental, deep-seated problems in their scheme, team chemistry, or player development. It is this lingering, unaddressed, and now publicly revealed challenge, exposed in such stark terms, that sits at the very heart of the current crisis, making Clark's alleged ultimatum a desperate, last-ditch plea for a fundamentally different future. The team's inability to truly coalesce, to become more than the sum of its parts, is the unspoken but very real threat to its entire future. The raw, unvarnished truth, aired on Sue Bird's podcast, created an instant, undeniable crisis, forcing a reckoning that many believe now demands a direct, unequivocal apology from Bird herself. While not a direct confession of fault, the sheer volume of unsettling revelations, from the unspoken, simmering tensions with Clark, to the team's undeniable defensive shambles, to the glaring inconsistencies in player development, has created an environment of intense, unrelenting scrutiny. The platform Bird provided, inadvertently or not, became the massive stage for a very public airing of the Fever's dirty laundry, fueling the very bench drama that is now threatening to dismantle the team from within. Bird, as the prominent host, undeniably bears an indirect but significant responsibility for the widespread fallout, as her show inadvertently became the primary catalyst for widespread speculation and intense concern about Caitlin Clark's future. The public outcry and the sheer severity of the implications have placed Bird in an incredibly awkward, almost untenable position, potentially requiring her to publicly address the unintended consequences of her guest's shocking candor. The WNBA is now watching with bated breath to see how Bird will navigate this unprecedented controversy that her own platform helped ignite. As the ripples from this explosive interview threaten to capsize the Fever's entire season and potentially change the league landscape forever, the profound silence from Bird's camp after these shocking statements has been deafening, only adding more fuel to the fire. And now, it's only a matter of time before she simply has to address the turmoil head-on. The growing unease and palpable frustration, exacerbated dramatically by the podcast's candid, unfiltered revelations, has reportedly culminated in what sources are now fearfully calling Caitlin Clark's desperate ultimatum to the Fever front office. The whispers suggest Clark is unequivocally demanding immediate, fundamental changes to how the team is managed, coached, and ultimately built, stating that if these changes aren't made, she will seriously consider her future elsewhere in the league. This isn't just about mere bench drama, this is about a generational talent refusing to be bogged down by persistent, systemic issues that were laid bare for the entire world to see on Sue Bird's platform. The inability to consistently win, the perceived lack of cohesion, and the arduous developmental curve, all meticulously discussed and exposed openly by Coach White, have reportedly pushed Clark to an undeniable breaking point. The Fever now stand at a critical, defining crossroads. Acquiesce to their superstars' demands and overhaul their entire approach, or risk losing the very player who is supposed to redefine their franchise, their city, and perhaps even the entire W. The pressure on the front office is immense, almost unfathomable, as the entire league watches intently to see if they can navigate this unprecedented challenge successfully. Clark's alleged ultimatum signifies a crucial turning point, a clear, unambiguous message that the current trajectory is simply unsustainable for a player of her caliber. Her patience, it seems, has finally run out, leaving the franchise scrambling desperately to salvage its future. The entire future of the Fever quite literally hinges on their immediate response to this seismic, franchise-altering challenge. Ultimately, the fallout from Sue Bird's podcast, which so graphically detailed the Fever's inner workings and the visible, unignorable fissures within the team, has dramatically reshaped the entire narrative surrounding Caitlin Clark and her future. What began as a candid, seemingly harmless interview has spiraled into a full-blown, undeniable crisis, forcing the WNBA to confront uncomfortable truths about team dynamics, player satisfaction, and the monumental, crushing pressure on its brightest star. The bench drama, fueled by unmet expectations and exposed organizational challenges, now tragically threatens to overshadow the immense, game-changing talent Clark brings to the league. The question isn't just whether Clark will stay with the Fever, but whether any franchise can truly manage the unprecedented weight and expectations of a Taylor Swift 2. This moment could fundamentally redefine how star players assert their influence, and how teams respond to internal strife and discontent. The stakes have never been higher for the Fever, as their reaction to this perfect storm will not only determine Clark's fate, but also set a significant precedent for the entire league. The ultimate truth, starkly revealed, is that immense talent demands an equally elite, cohesive, and deeply supportive system. A system that, according to these shocking, eye-opening revelations, the Fever may not yet possess. The path forward for both Clark and the Fever is now murky, defined by relentless public scrutiny and an urgent, non-negotiable need for profound, systemic change.